Charles Johnson. I'm a student from high school for recording arts. You know, I go by the name Killer Crook, but I don't want none of y'all to get the wrong impressions. I'm not a killer or I'm not a crook, you know what I'm saying? I'm turning a negative into a positive. I'm killing crooks, so just get that fact straight. And now, then another thing, briefly, I'm gonna say this briefly. This song I'm performing today is called Hard Times, you know what I'm saying? And man, I've been working on it. I finished it last year. It took me a year to write this song, and I was working on it. I was homeless when I was 14, and I'm 19 now, and I just got my own apartment. So it took me... It took me like a minute, you know what I mean, to, Miss Bain from Hazel Park. It took me a minute, though, to really see how to get from being homeless. So music inspired me, and this helped me do everything. And long story short, this is just a song that represents my life, you know what I'm saying? It just tells you who I am, basically. It's hard times. Thanks for everybody coming out here today. I appreciate it. It's like,
listen to me carefully, can you hear me out? I'm about to say some things that y'all don't even know about. When I was trapping out of my mama's house, selling drugs, so I slowed it down, cause my whole demeanor was different now. When I was sleeping out of them playgrounds, it made me feel so helpless, but I ain't selfish. All the pressure I done dealt with, quiet, kept no show and telling I'm successful from motivated. If y'all wanted me to tell you my potential, confidential, when I was touching them crystals, nobody else can resemble. No, what I was doing is nothing else but improving, and if y'all want a solution, I just continue resuming. I don't predict no assuming for treating rappers like students, cause all my life I heard rumors with anything I wanted to change. Kill a crook, kill and maintain. There's nothing much that talk contain could detain the process of pain. My progress is all in my veins. Y'all criticizing the game, I'm committed, nowhere you can't. See with me, I stay the same. From my state where y'all ain't safe to demonstrate how to get this cake and elevate to make mistakes as I couldn't. Looking forward, keep pushing my ride and my motivation with certain moves and occasions that I've been fearing. But facing with a new location and statements that I've been hearing. Y'all hating with no surveillance, I'm under, but when my dad left my mother, I'm working hard and discover that I couldn't recover. But at the end, I ain't suffer, cause I'm by myself with no brothers. It's like, why people gotta get out of line? Man, collaboration is exclusive when I'm writing these rhymes. And all my people that's in prisons that committed a crime, we all just learning how we living, and that's called hard time. It's like, why people gotta get out of line? My definition is exclusive when I'm writing these rhymes. And all my people, and all my we are just learning how we living, and that's called a hard time. It's like, why people gotta get out of line? My definition is exclusive when I'm writing these rhymes. And all my people that's in prisons that committed a crime, we are just learning how we living, and that's called a hard time. It's like, why people gotta get out of line? My definition is explicit when I'm writing these rhymes. And all my people that's in prisons that committed a crime, we are just learning how we living, and that's called a hard time. It's like, all I had to do was keep my focus and notice that most emotions are hopeless. It ain't no help or resources that I was taking important, cause I was stupid and bogus at the time in the moment. But then my mind got explosive for any willing opponent that couldn't keep that composure. I kept them under hypnosis, and now I beat a Chief Joseph because I'm black and Lakota. Guess where I'm from, Minnesota. Growing up getting older with a lot of stress on my shoulders. I told them, hit me, I got me, I'm coming through like I'm Ali. And y'all can't stop me, not probably because my habits, my hobbies. Now look at me, bring a difference from all the things I was missing. I stay consistent with wishes, that's how I live. Now I'm living, then all my rhymes got ridiculous from unexpected attention. But my first instant audition was making rappers artistic, no competition. My sentence was strictly based behind business. Knocking my sunny listing is what I learned independent. I just destroy with the vision, but please excuse my attention. No reminiscing without permission, just counter all consequences. I ain't have a pot to piss in when I was stranded, left in abandoned, kind of managed, disadvantage. My dynamic couldn't withstand it, never advantage. Just remember who I am behind these cameras, go bananas, all that matters. I told them that I'm a savage, moving forward, not backwards. This music is what I'm after, so I had it. Never get distracted, just keep pushing with my passion. Why people gotta get out of line? My definition is explicit when I'm writing these rhymes. And all my people that's
How y'all doing? Well, Buju, Javier Ynez, Indigenous Cause, Odawa, Zaganin, Ninjunjaba, Makwa and Dudame, Ashinanan, Bibunigas. My name is Javier Ynez. I am from the Lakudere Ojibwe Reservation in Wisconsin. 15 years old, and I moved to Little Earth about a year ago, not because I wanted to move away from home, but I wanted to move so I could have a better challenge in education. And Little Earth is pretty nice because I met a lot of different native tribes that I never knew about. And just a year ago, I went to a conference in Denver, Colorado, called Johnson O'Malley. We were talking about native youth dropouts, and the youth dropouts, it affected my family because the two older siblings, they both dropped out of high school, 10th grade, and I didn't want that to happen to me. So I'm still focusing on school and ignoring all the side conversations and getting good grades. Well, that's a little bit about me, and thank you all for coming out to support My Brother's Keepers event and giving me and others this opportunity to speak. And I want to introduce President Kaler. Yep.
Thank you, Javier. Congratulations on good progress. I look forward to welcoming you to the University of Minnesota in about 3 years. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the university. We're so pleased to have you here today. Mayor Hodges and Mayor Coleman, we're honored to have you on campus. Particularly pleased to welcome President Harris of the Minnesota Council on Foundations, and thank you for your leadership on so many very important things. And welcome also to U.S. Deputy Assistant Attorney General Kappeloff. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of one of my bosses, Regent Abdul Omari is here, and also another university leader, Shakir Abdullah from our Office for Equity and Diversity is with us. So distinguished guest, welcome. And absolutely not least but last, welcome to all the students that are here to take part of the program today. I hope you join Javier at the University of Minnesota as your educational path continues to develop. I really do hope you aspire to be students at this great university, and I want you all to graduate from here and take your leadership skills to the next level. I'm actually very excited about My Brother's Keeper Community Challenge action plan that we're unveiling today. We launched the Minneapolis-St. Paul My Brother's Keeper effort less than a year ago, and since then, in a series of activities that are in line with the spirit of MBK, we've made it a priority here at the U to improve our campus climate and to make it more welcoming and successful and respectful for all students. We've begun planning for a high-touch early outreach program for multicultural high school students, perhaps even into the junior high school level, to seek new ways of encouraging boys of color, young men of color, to achieve and aspire in the classroom. We've launched the Educational Equity Resource Center, which is the nation's first dedicated research hub and portal for information about closing the truly unacceptable achievement and opportunity gaps in Minnesota. We think it's an important bridge between our researchers and resources and educators who work with kids every day. It has a website, gap.umn.edu. It's filling with data even as we speak and will be a very powerful resource for Minnesota. We're certainly proud to play an important role in the community to tackle these grand challenges of our state and our nation. Closing educational disparities, among other disparities in our state, is at the core of what we do as the state's only public research university, as the state's great flagship urban campus, a land-grant campus, with a mission to serve the state, its citizens, and the common good. And so we've gathered here today at the U to work together to vigorously address the pressing needs of young men of color in our community. And let's make this action plan a model for the nation and a powerful success story for our young men of color and their families. Again, welcome to the university, and thank you for being here this afternoon.
Hello, my name is Phillipe Cunningham, and I am a youth worker and public policy advocate here in the Twin Cities. I now call North Minneapolis home after moving here from Chicago, where I was a special education teacher in Chicago Public Schools. Recently, Mayor Hodges appointed me to the Youth Violence Prevention Executive Committee for the City of Minneapolis, and I eagerly accepted the invitation because this is my life's work and because I believe in our youth. Since moving to Minneapolis, I have been devoted to supporting the young members of our community by intentionally cultivating opportunities for them to discover their greatness, and also to empower them to recognize that they already have the capacity to be leaders in our community. I'm a part of My Brother's Keeper because there is no greater indication of my success as an educator than a young person who audaciously defines their own vision of success and who tenaciously pursues those dreams. I would like to share a story with you about a 16-year-old African-American young man I work with named Wally. I recently asked him how he defines his own success. How will you know when you have been successful? He replied, when my community isn't suffering anymore. So I inquired further, what does ending the suffering of your community look like? And in a brilliant response I've come to expect from this young man, he said, when people can go to the doctor and be healthy, and when they can go to school and get a good education, and when people can just be happy and live their lives. He went on to share with me that he wants to be an elementary school teacher because, as he put it, he wants to build up young kids' minds so that they know that they can make it. He wants to empower future generations. This is all because he understands that education can completely transform a community. Over the course of working with Wally, I have consistently seen him educating not only his peers, but also the staff and volunteers about his community whenever the opportunity avails itself. This young man glows with pride in his values. The My Brother's Keeper Challenge represents a call to action for all members of the community to come together and make change through policy, programming, and partnership in order to improve the quality of life for the African American boys and young men in our community. As we confront these challenges together, we must move forward with the mutual understanding that, as Leela Watson said, your liberation is bound up with mine. The initiative is structured around the idea that we all play a vital role in creating the systemic change that we are all seeking to make. City officials, the government, its partners, foundations, community members, we all must come together to begin healing hundreds of years of systemic oppression. The fact that President Obama has launched this initiative, which operates from core values that could systemically shift the Black male experience, is evidence that we are entering a momentous time in history. But for that change to be sustainable, we all must take responsibility and invest in one another's well-being. So take a look around you. The stranger across the room may have their very own Wally story. These are your brothers and your sisters. This is our community. As a member of the Youth Violence Prevention Executive Committee, I know I speak for all of us when I say we joyously answer this call to action because we believe that all youth deserve a childhood free of violence. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you our next guest, Mark Kappeloff. Mark is a Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. In this position, he is in charge of the division's enforcement efforts related to policing practices, human trafficking, and hate crimes. Among his other responsibility, he recently has been directing and supervising the Civil Rights Division, criminal and civil investigations in Ferguson, Missouri, and Baltimore, Maryland, as well as playing a key role in the Justice Department's police reform efforts around the country. He is involved in a number of local legal and community-based organizations in Minnesota, including serving on the board of 180 Degrees Inc., and on the Council on Crime and Justice. Let's please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, Philippe. Thank you very much for that kind introduction, and thanks for your wonderful leadership to reduce the youth violence in the Twin Cities. Let's give Philippe a hand. It's really terrific to be back here in my home state of Minnesota. I currently work in Washington, D.C., as Philippe mentioned, but I was born in St. Paul, and I now live in Minneapolis. And I think it's always important when you have the mayors of Minneapolis and St. Paul to mention those cities early in your remarks. So I started with that. And I'm actually on leave from the law school, so I actually work for President Kaler. So I think I've covered all the bases now, right? I'm good to go? Okay, great. So it's a terrific pleasure to be here participating in today's event. It was an honor to be invited here. And I was here last November when we kicked off, or you all kicked off, the My Brother's Keeper Challenge. And it's so inspiring, really, to see the tremendous progress that you've all made in just a few short months. It's inspiring, though really not surprising, because after all, we're Minnesotans, right? We get things done. And that's what happened today. That's what we're talking about. And it's an honor to share the stage with Mayor Hodges, Mayor Coleman, President Kaler, MCF President Harris, and all these young leaders here who are really transforming our cities. So let's give this whole group a round of applause for their leadership. These are the transformative and visionary leaders who are really leading not only the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, but really our state in a transformative way, in changing really our nation as we're doing this. And it's a tremendous pleasure to be part of this. So on behalf of the Department of Justice, I'm really here today for a simple message, and that's to thank all of you for the tremendous and tangible progress you've made on the My Brother's Keeper Community Challenge, and to congratulate you on rolling out the action plan in such a remarkably short time. It's really impressive, and you're really leading the country in this effort. I'm familiar with all of the other efforts around the country, and Minnesota is really a beacon in this terrific program. When President Obama first announced the My Brother's Keeper initiative from the East Room of the White House back in February of 2014, he framed it as a call to action for every American to recognize, and these are his words, that my neighbor's child is my child. That each of us has an obligation to give every child the same chance in this country that has been given to so many of us. It's a very simple message and a very simple mission. And I'm happy to report that thousands of leaders across the country have answered this call to action. Just like all of you in this room, hundreds of mayors, tribal leaders, county executives, community leaders from 43 states across the country have accepted the MBK Community Challenge to design and implement cradle-to-college and career action plans. And this is what it's about, action. We can talk about these issues, but we really made it start making a difference. And it's just like the action plan that you're all unveiling today. In just 8 months, under the great leadership of Mayor Coleman, Mayor Hodges, with the input of many of you and many of you on the stage, and 90 community partners and innovators, you've designed the Minneapolis-St. Paul MBK Community College Action Plan. This is an impressive, transformative plan that will provide the framework for the Twin Cities to better address the needs of boys and young men of color in St. Paul and Minneapolis. True to your Minnesota work ethic and values, and that's what this is about, values, you've all soundly answered the call to action with remarkable energy, resolve, and sense of purpose. The array of fresh initiatives that you are unveiling today will attack and overcome the challenges facing our youth in the Twin Cities in new and innovative ways. And through your collective efforts, our children, our cities, our state will benefit. So congratulations on these great efforts. I also want to take a couple moments and touch on the key role that the Department of Justice has been playing in the MBK initiative. Under the leadership of Attorney General Eric Holder and now Attorney General Lynch, an essential part of our mission has been to prevent and reduce youth violence and to make sure that all youth are treated fairly by the justice system. Consistent with the goals of the MBK initiative, the Department of Justice has expanded our efforts to enact policies to reform the criminal justice system. For example, through our Smart on Crime initiative, some of you may be familiar with, federal prosecutors have reduced their reliance on mandatory minimum drug sentences, and during this same time period, our country has also experienced the first drop in the federal prison population in over 30 years, with no resulting increase in crime. I'm so proud to be part of the Department of Justice that's making these tangible changes in people's lives. These are real differences. We're also confronting the criminal justice challenges holistically across the country. For example, we know that the path to prison starts shockingly early, in some cases in elementary school. That's why the Civil Rights Division, where I work, is working to disrupt the school-to-prison pipeline. We try to intervene wherever we find the draconian school discipline practices involving minor infractions such as uniform violations or tardiness. We had a case in Mississippi, Meridian, Mississippi, where young children were carted off to jail for having their shirts untucked. We addressed that. We used the civil rights laws that have been around for years, decades, and we brought suit, and we have now reformed the Meridian school system, which at the time was a school-to-prison pipeline. That no longer exists because of the laws we enforce in the Civil Rights Division. Far too many students of color are diverted from the path to success to a prison cell as a result of unnecessarily harsh discipline policies and practices. And just last month, I'm proud to say the Department of Justice launched a national initiative for building community trust and justice. Funded through a $4.75 million grant, this innovative program is designed to help repair and strengthen the relationship between law enforcement and the communities they serve by addressing procedural justice issues, reducing bias, and fostering reconciliation between law enforcement and communities. And I'm delighted to tell you today that Minneapolis was selected as one of the first 6 pilot cities thanks to the great leadership of Chief Hudson. I've had a front row seat over the last several months of the dialogue we have in our country between law enforcement and communities. I've been in Ferguson, I was in Baltimore 2 weeks ago. This is the type of program that communities need to continue that dialogue in a positive and productive way. So I'm so proud that Minneapolis is one of those 6 pilot sites. I think I had a little bit to do with it, I'm not sure. Sometimes you have a hometown advantage when you're in DC. Let me close by mentioning the latest exciting development of the My Brother's Keeper initiative that was announced by the president just a few weeks ago. It's called My Brother's Keeper Alliance. It's a terrific program, and what it involves, the MBK Alliance involves a diverse group of CEOs from Fortune 50 companies, entertainers, leading nonprofits, and current and former government officials who are pledging to work to expand opportunity for youth and strengthen the American workforce by tackling the achievement gap from cradle to career. These organizations recognize that making sure all our young people have the opportunity to succeed is an economic imperative in our country. They've already secured $80 million in commitments to fund grants, job skill training programs, and education-based initiatives across the country. So the My Brother's Keeper initiative is about recognizing that our young people are not the problem, rather they're the solution. That's who these people are, the solution. That's our future. And it's about each of us seeing our neighbor's child as our own. Their futures as individuals and as members of a shared community and economy are forever tied together. As our nation reflects on our shared responsibility to ensure that opportunity reaches every young person, everyone must look at their own capacity to make a difference in our country. With today's launch of the Minneapolis-St. Paul MBK Action Plan, you are not only pledging to make a difference, you are building a brighter future for our children, our cities, our state, and our nation. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Mark. My name is Dave Ellis, and I'm going to let my friend introduce himself here.
My name is Jonathan Mensah.
And so I asked Jonathan when we talked about this, how did we get to where we are today? So what was the process? And when I talked to Jonathan, I said, you know, part of this is about adult-youth partnership. And how do you have an authentic adult-youth partnership? And so my answer to him was, you're going to be on stage with me to present this, that it's not about me, that in fact, my role in life is now about making sure that these young people have a chance to create the world that they want to live in. Because I created the one that I want to live in, that's the one I'm in now. Now I've got to make space and place for them to do the exact same thing. So by way of process, you heard Mark talk about President Obama and the launch in February. Also, just know that in June, the mayors called together about 400 community folks to talk about, should we do this? The Minnesota Council on Foundations brought together a funders learning circle. Should we do this? What should we be doing? In September, both mayors accepted the challenge from President Obama. In fact, they were early adopters, acceptors of that project. In November, there was a large community summit that was held for folks to give advice on where this should go. And then in December, both mayors came together to form a community advisory group made up really of a sampling of those agencies and folks within the Twin Cities who are actually working with men and boys of color. And I will say that at that point, that's where I became involved as the lead facilitator on the project on the community side. And so my responsibility was trying to figure out, okay, if we're going to create a plan, what's the process to get there? And hoping that 40 very diverse people with 40 very diverse ideas on where we should be going, that we could create a process where all of us could come to consensus about how that was going to happen and everyone buy in. And that's where we are today. So in January, that group started meeting. And I just want to thank Urban Ventures for providing a space for us every month to come in and do that. John, without you, I think we were always stretching to figure out where we were going to go, but you always had the doors open for us, and I do appreciate that, sir. In January also, the Council on Foundations brought together the Learning Circle. Really, they were briefed on the local initiatives and all of the best practices that were happening. And so now I'm going to let Jonathan take over, and he'll finish this part of the presentation.
In February, it was the first meeting that I actually attended. And when I was there, it was an experience that I never felt before. I felt that when I was there, at first, the environment itself was very calm, very collected, and the ratio of adults and youth, of young men rather, was 5 to 10. Clearly, we were outnumbered. The adults were winning at first, but when the discussion happened between the young men and the young women and adults, we took control. We were able to say what we wanted to say. We were able to give advice. We were able to consult, basically, although we weren't getting paid for it. But we took control, and we expressed our fears, experiences, and problems that we have went through our community, the negativity, and the positive sides as well. And we felt that we were being heard. Indeed, the adults were hearing us and seeing us as equals. And that, I must say, I was very proud of. And one thing that I received from this particular reason, that it was possible for there to be a professional discussion of importance that could be held between young adults and adults themselves. And one thing that I remember and that I always try to incorporate is anything about us, without us, isn't for us. And that goes for everyone, I feel. Anything that concerns young adults should include young adults. That's the only way change can actually happen that concerns young adults. In April, that's when another meeting happened that I was involved in. Adults, and this was the brainstorming about how do we get there. We know our goals, but how do we get there? How do we achieve these goals? And we thought about programs that already achieve this but don't have enough funding, and they're small groups or small communities that are achieving these certain goals, which these goals were 3 goals that we focused on out of the 6 goals that were initially started from President Obama. These 3 goals, which were getting young people ready for school, so to prepare students to get to school and to prepare them to study hard so they can succeed and come back into their community and teach those kids to succeed. The next one was getting kids able to read at their grade level. Many kids take for granted how reading is so important. And in order to do this, we need to get them to focus on how the importance of reading and education is. The final one was finally giving young men second chances. I've seen too many young adults who are about my age who have been locked up and now are looking for a way to better their lives. However, they can't because the only job they can get is in McDonald's. But how is that going to solve the solution? How is that going to get our young adults out of those jails? It's just a cycle, isn't it? We need to break that cycle by giving them a second chance. In this meeting, we really did progress, and we were able to find solutions to these problems. We were able to conversate and to discuss on important topics and to move forward with this plan. And in May, we are here presenting our topic and presenting our solutions. So thank you so much again for the adults listening to us. Thank you again for the program. Thanks again for Urban Ventures for hosting us. And have a good day.
All right, I only have 4 minutes of your time, but I'll just use just 2. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Isaiah J. Hudson. I was born on the south side of Minneapolis, but raised on the north side of Minneapolis. Growing up, I've seen many things in my community like violence. My brother Marvin Maynard was a victim of gun violence. Seeing that has helped me go towards a more better and brighter future. My supervisor, Ms. Connie Rose, has helped introduce me to the Violence Prevention Committee. That's a committee that finds out ways to reduce violence in our community and in our schools. Ms. Connie Rose, she's a member of the BUILD program. The BUILD Leaders is a set of leaders that reaches out to At Hope kids. Other people use the term at risk, but we don't like to use that term because it's like a saying that you're at risk of failing. You're at risk of not graduating. You're at risk of not achieving your goals. You're at risk. So we like to say At Hope. Preparing for my interview with the mayor, I picked out my best dress shirt, my best suit jacket. I polished up my shoes a little bit. Hopped out the shower, I looked in the mirror, said to myself, I got this. All right, arriving to the mayor's office, I arrived a little bit early. By a little bit, I mean a whole half an hour. I even arrived to this event early. I believe in the saying, if you're early, you're on time, and if you're on time, you're late. Yes. All right, before I began my interview with the mayor, I was a little bit nervous because she's so well polished. She has a lot of power in the community. And, you know, I thought to myself, can I even be myself? But not a minute or two within the interview, I became at ease. I became comfortable talking to her about my trip to D.C., what I've seen out there, what I've done out there. I'm sorry, I got lost a little bit. I have to get back on track right now. Okay, I'm thinking back on track. Okay, after the interview, you know, we take pictures. I was sitting at her desk. I was seeing what her office is about. But it was this question that was inside me that was just burning. I had to ask her. I said, Mayor Hodges, Do you have any relatives in your family that are black? Because I'm just so comfortable talking to you. She said, as a matter of fact, my husband is black. I said, that's why I feel this connection between us. So it is my pleasure to introduce my mayor, my friend, my relative, Mayor Betsy Hodges.
Can you imagine what it is like to have Isaiah Hudson walk into your office? That was an extraordinary meeting, and ever since then, Isaiah, you have been inspiring my work and helping me do it well and do it better than I would have otherwise. And so thank you, and thank you for that introduction. Yes, I do have people in my family who are black. You know, I asked a question this spring, hey, how much genius are we going to leave on the table? Right? That was the question that I asked this spring. How much genius are we actually willing to leave on the table? And what I love about today is that we are making it clear as a community that the answer is none, zero, that we're going to leave on the table. Right? So if you could do me a favor and just cheer like we're celebrating something. Just cheer like we're celebrating something. You know, this is an important and auspicious occasion, and we've been treating it as such, but really at the heart of it, there is something to celebrate, which is we as a community have come together and made a decision that we as a community value our entire community. And by valuing our entire community, we may need to put some effort and some attention on our young men and our boys of color. Because until our entire community is thriving, we as a community are not thriving, and that there's something in it for every one of us. We cannot afford to leave genius on the table. We know where the demographics are going. We know that white people are retiring, that baby boomers are retiring, that a lot of the baby boomers are white, that people coming up behind, we need to make sure everybody is prepared to take on the roles and the leadership and the jobs of the future, and that the people coming up behind are increasingly people of color, and that if we leave our situation the way it is, we're not going to have what we need as a community. And today is a celebration of the huge hearts and brains and minds that sometimes we call an asset in our community, which are our young men and our boys of color. And we celebrate ourselves as a result of doing that. But it's not just about making sure we have the workforce we need. It's about making sure we have the civic leadership, the community leadership we need to build One Minneapolis, to make sure that we have what we need to become absolutely the city of the future. And by One Minneapolis, I mean One Minneapolis and St. Paul. But that is the truth. Sorry about that, Chris. It is the truth, though, that we did come together as a region, that we have come together as a region. And you think about who's in this room, you think about who sat at the table, young people from both Minneapolis and St. Paul and the region, leadership, both elected, nonprofit, foundation, government, from Minneapolis, from St. Paul, coming together, making sure that our entire community can thrive. All of us gathered. I thank the President of the United States for the vision he has with My Brother's Keeper in pulling us together. I thank President Kaler for the vision that the University of Minnesota has and has shared as part of this plan. I thank Trista Harris for the hard work and the day-to-day work of making sure that the foundation and the philanthropic community are brought to the table so that we can all align our work together. I thank Mark Kappeloff for coming here, for the work that you've been doing in general and in specific to support My Brother's Keeper. And I want to thank, we have a number of leaders in the room. We have Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman is here, who you cannot ask for a more steadfast ally on this work, making sure that he and his folks are present at this table doing the work moving forward. I know we have State Representative Jim Davney is here, City Council Member from Minneapolis Cam Gordon is here, Chief Harteau from Minneapolis is here, our City Attorney Susan Siegel is here, leadership is here in the room, and I'm sure there are others that Chris will be able to identify as well. I want to thank Diane Halsey, and I want to thank Nicole Archbold, who, as members of the mayor's staff in Minneapolis, have helped make this happen and move forward and make me look good. So just thanks. So all of us gathered, and we gathered on a set of principles, one of which is changing our systems, because our systems are set up now to get the results that we're getting, and we're going to need to change them to get different results. And the commitment to that from this room, from everybody, the hundreds of people who gathered, the commitment to that is palpable, and I share that commitment, that we have to be culturally specific. We have to be thoughtful in our strategies about who they're for and who they're about. And I have to say, this isn't written in the plan anywhere, but I think we are collectively making an agreement to withstand our own discomfort. That the changes that are going to be required, the systemic changes, new ways of thinking, new ways of acting, new ways of being, new ways of having youth be partners, partners and friends, and people who inspire me every day. Did I mention I'm a fan of Isaiah? All of that's going to make us uncomfortable if we're doing it right. And so the commitment we make is not just to seek that discomfort, but to be willing to withstand it in a way that moves the work forward and not that halts it in its tracks. So I, as a leader, make this commitment to you today, to the systems changes in the city and what we're doing to embed this work in everything that we do at the city, and I can tell you what we're doing around that. My Cradle to K recommendations came out yesterday. We have a Promise Zone designation. We have an innovations team grant that's going to be looking at making sure that our services are provided equitably throughout the city, and on and on. And I make that commitment, and I've made that commitment every day I've woken up as the mayor. But I also make the commitment to you, and particularly to the young people here, that I make the commitment to withstand my own discomfort, to seek it in some ways when it's needed, to move things forward, to withstand it, to learn how to manage through it, and to help others do the same. Because let's be honest, it's going to be uncomfortable to do something as different as we're inviting ourselves to do. But this is about all of us. This is about our entire community. I know, as a mayor who represents an entire city with an extraordinary partner in St. Paul who represents his entire city, we know that this is about all of us. We know that this is about our entire city and our entire community. This isn't about one neighborhood. This isn't about two neighborhoods. This isn't about north. This isn't about south. This is about every single corner of the city of Minneapolis. This is about every single corner of our region. And we are acting like it. Today is evidence that we are acting like this is one of the most important things that we can face together as a community. And I'm proud to be here. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for Sorry about that. Thank you for joining us today in this event to support My Brother's Keeper. My name is Chu Yang Chang, and I'm a junior at Harding High School. I was born and raised in the east side St. Paul in the Phelan neighborhood. And when I'm not at school, I'm pushing carts at Cub Foods. I'm here today because I believe in the importance of education for young men of color like me. In fact, I believe in that education so much that I'm part of St. Paul Public Schools Genius Squad, where we teach teachers and students how to use certain technology. Recently, we held a student-ran conference called GeniusCon, where we offered classes on how to use certain apps on their iPads, which were recently introduced this fall. In one of my classes, I was teaching an app called GarageBand. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but it's an app where you create music using a variety of instruments. So while I was teaching this class on how to use a guitar, I overheard another student's iPad, and it was great music, but I ignored it at first because I didn't think much of it. But as time went on, I saw that he was making beats and imitating this song perfectly on his iPad. And I was like, what? This kid is better than me? So I invited him up, and I was like, hey, did you want to teach the whole class how you were making your beats and stuff? And then soon enough, he was playing on my iPad, imitating the song again that I was trying to demonstrate to the class, and he was doing it perfectly. And right afterwards, the students of the class started joining along, adding drums and pianos from the iPads, and I was just standing there shocked because I was the teacher of the classroom, but he was being a better teacher than I was, and he was a student. There are lots of us with that kind of potential and ability to teach others. We all just need a chance. This was just a freshman taking my class, learning to use an app on his iPad, but instead, he was teaching the kids, and he was teaching me, actually. That's what today is about, giving the opportunity to young men to express their ability and potential. Mayor Chris Coleman has been passionate about education, and I'm proud to be part of his action plans. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Mayor Chris Coleman.
Good afternoon. It's good to see you all here. Good to see these wonderful young men here behind me showing me the way of what our future is going to look like, and I think the future looks pretty good, don't you? I don't know if Chu knows this about me, but I love music, and so I love the story about the kids using the garage band and how the teacher all of a sudden becomes the student if we allow that student to reach their full potential. But as I heard about that story, I was thinking, the thing about music, and I'm trying to play guitar. I was forced to give up bagpipes when the neighbors complained. So when I became mayor, I thought, I should learn how to play the guitar. And I thought, guitar is kind of a hard thing to learn how to play when you're in your late 40s and early 50s. And wouldn't it have been great if I had started to learn how to play the guitar when I was, 8 or 9 or 10 years old? It would have been so much easier, because as you go on, things get hardened. And in order to learn how to play, you have to sacrifice other things. You can't go out and play golf for 3 hours or watch TV for 3 hours or do this or that. If you also want to learn how to play the guitar, you have to sacrifice some things. You have to give it up. And the sooner you start, the easier it's going to be to learn how to play guitar. And I thought, what a great analogy for the work that we're doing here. It would have been a wonderful thing had we started on this venture 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, or how about at the beginning of our country when we would have had the true value of all being equal, had we started from that proposition and actually... But as we go forward to do the work of My Brother's Keeper, it is hard because we have started way too late in the game, but that doesn't mean that we can't do what we need to do. But it does mean that we'll have to sacrifice some other things. It does mean that we're going to have to make some tough choices. It does mean that we're going to have to be uncomfortable and get into spaces that we don't necessarily want to get into, because this is what we do. I was very fortunate to be at the launch of My Brother's Keeper when the president announced this from the East Room of the White House, and it was an amazing, amazing day of my life that I'll never forget. Sitting there, first of all, with these young men of color from Chicago that the president had met with earlier and then brought into the White House to tell their stories about the obstacles and the challenges that they faced, but to tell also how when they heard the president's own story about the challenges and obstacles that he faced as a young man, it inspired them to understand that they could accomplish much more. But I was in that room with the parents of Trayvon Martin. And it just hit home sitting there so close to the parents of a young man that we had heard so much about, and the giant tragedy of his life being taken so young for no reason. And what ultimately inspired the president to call for My Brother's Keeper as a specific and a directed initiative for young men of color, young men and boys of color in this country. But the tragedy that we see doesn't just play out in the pages of the New York Times or on the front covers of our local newspapers when we hear about an incident in Ferguson or Baltimore or wherever that might be. The tragedy occurs every day in this community when as Mayor Hodges says, we leave genius on the table. That's the tragedy that occurs. It occurs in every day in the courtrooms of this country when we see one after another young man of color being brought into the criminal justice system. That's the tragedy that doesn't get written about as often as it needs to be, or isn't it told as often as it needs to be. But we have to understand, we have got to reverse that. We can't afford to continue as a society. I spent a lot of years of my life as a public defender, and there's always one young man that I remember so distinctly. His crime wasn't particularly unique. It was sad and tragic. A young man killed another young man during the course of a drug deal gone bad. Plays out all too often in this country on a daily and weekly basis. But what struck me about this young man was what a great young man he was. How intelligent he was, how funny he was, how charming and social he was. But he had been born as an African American boy in Watts, grew up in a society that had broken down, that had no levels of support for him. And so this was the path that led him to sitting in a jail cell in downtown Minneapolis. And I thought, what if this young man had been named Chris Coleman and been born into the same circumstances that I had been? Or if his name was Kennedy or Bush or Hodges or Kaler? How life would have been different for that young man who clearly had all of the skill sets to succeed, but had never been given a chance to succeed. I think also of a story that Brian Stevenson, who used to be the head of the Alabama Capital Resources Center, once told about Alabama Capital Resource Center was working with young men on death row. And he told the story of a young man that he worked with and was unsuccessful in getting his sentence commuted. And on the day that this young man was to be executed, Brian went in late in the evening and sat with him. And he said, "How are you doing?" The man said, "It's been a good day." So tell me about it. "Well, this morning I got up and the guards were really nice to me. And they said, 'What do you want for breakfast? You can have anything that you want. Is there anything that we can get you?' So he ordered breakfast and he sat and ate it. After breakfast was cleared, he said, 'Look, can we get you a phone? Is there anybody that you need to call? Is there anybody that you want to get a hold of? Is there anybody that you want to say goodbye to?' And so they got him a phone and he made phone calls. And then they brought him lunch. Whatever you need, whatever you want. After lunch, is there anything that you need? Do you want anything, any paper? Do you want a pencil? Do you want anything to write on? Do you want any letters to write, stamps, or whatever you need? Do you want a magazine? Is there anything that you want to read?" All day long, people were asking this young man, "How can we help you, and what do you want?" And at the end of the day, as they led that man to be executed, Brian Stevenson simply thought, if once they had asked that question when this young man was a young boy struggling in school, when he was without a home, when he was confronted with violence, when he was struggling in school, if they just asked him, "What do you need? What do you want? How can we help you?" he wouldn't have been sitting there on death row. My Brother's Keeper is about asking our young men and boys of color, what do you need? How can we help you? What is it that we can do for you to lift you up so that you can bring your genius to our community, to bring your genius to bear, to reach your full potential that often we don't talk about? Someone said this the other day. We said, we know the statistics about the dangers and challenges, and you said at-risk youth. I love at-hope youth, because that's what this is about. Let's stop talking about a deficit model. Let's stop talking about the things that our children don't have, and let's start talking about the things that they do have. If we allow them to realize that potential, let us lift this up. Let us figure it out how it is that we're going to make this possible for all of these young men so that our children reach their full potential and achieve what we know that they're capable of. We have a lot of work to do, but My Brother's Keeper gives us some organizing principles around that. And it's a change, a dramatic change in how we approach things. But we have to do that if we're going to get where we need to go. We have to recognize the individuality of all of our young men of color and stop lumping them into a single category. The challenges of a young African-American man who was born on the east side of the city of St. Paul are different than a young African-American whose family came from Somalia or other parts of East Africa. We can't lump them into one single story and say that a solution that fits one will fit all. The stories of a young Hmong man might be very different than the story of a Karen. They're not the same, but too often we have this lump called young men of color. So let's lift them up and make them visible. Let's make sure that we have the data to understand their individual stories and their individual challenges and how we can tap into their strength of their culture and their roots to help them realize their full potential. We need to make sure that in every department, in every organization, whether it's the University of Minnesota, the City of St. Paul, the City of Minneapolis, the State of Minnesota, that we have a focus on the work of MBK. We have to have an informed lens that says the work that we do to change our practices, to budget around those changes, to direct our department directors and every one of our employees to understand that they play a role in this work is something that we have to change. We're making those changes, whether it's Mayor Hodges' Cradle to Career strategies, whether it's our Sprockets Out of School Time network. We have 20,000 youth right now in our database that are participating in out-of-school time programming so that now we can look at those young men and figure out what's working and what's not, and how can we elevate what is working and get rid of what isn't. How do we make sure that what we're doing in the out-of-school time space is connecting directly to student success in school? We have incredible stories. We know that it works, and so we need to get to work and ultimately change the perception in this community and in communities across America of our young men of color. We need to stop looking at them from a deficit standpoint and understanding the asset that they are to our community. We see too many stories of disparities, and we hear too many stories of failure. But I've seen the stories of success. I highlighted a young man named Donnell Gibson, who participated in our EMS Academy a few years ago, who went on to work for our park system, had all of the challenges that we hear too many times, but he was lifted up. He was given an opportunity to see his full potential, and that full potential was realized when he ran into a burning house in St. Paul a couple of months ago and saved the lives of the whole family because he had the courage and he had been given the opportunity to be lifted. So we have some very specific things that we are working on. I just want to outline those a little bit, if I can find the right page. Jane, help me. First of all, again, we want to have culturally specific strategies, not just lumping all of our kids into one group. We need to change our institutions. We need to make sure that what we're doing reflects the work of MBK. We need to change perceptions of our young men of color. And ultimately, we need to ask the question, what is it that you need? How can we help you? Because if we ask that question of our young men, and we truly are there to help, we know what they can achieve. We know what they're capable of. This is tough. Our work should have started decades, if not centuries ago. But the fact of the matter is, we are on the right path. And as Mark Kappeloff said, I don't think there's anybody that will do it better than this community right here with all of you as partners. Thank you.
Hello. How you guys doing? I'm Austin Lee. I'm a high school student at High School for Recording Arts, and I'm actually graduating this year. I have a quick question. Do you guys support local talent at all? All right. I have this little piece here for you guys. All right. Southside done raised me. I never let another hater faze me. Now that I'm making it, friends act shady. Cause they see that I'm rocking these crowds. And I'm making everybody go wild. I ain't no copycat, I made my style. Gotta turn up cause it's my time now. If you disbelieve, better watch and see my style so clean and so with me. GENTGTMD with the MFE, ain't no stopping me. Now I'm doing my thing up in the booth. When I rap, you know I spit the truth. When pull around, gotta hit the boost, got the juice, breaking all the rules, killing other fools. It's Chinky out from Major Flow. I started off weak, now the flow is so cold. In the beginning, I was shy, now I'm bold. My bars you can't hold while I'm at these independent sold-out shows. I did that because dreams can come true. You guys believe that? I actually fulfilled one of my dreams by going on tour with one of my favorite artists not too long ago. That was the best experience of my life ever. Sorry about that. He goes by Liquid Assassin. He's actually from St. Paul, Minnesota. And he was signed under a label called Strange Music, made by Tech Nine. I don't know if you guys heard of him. And I'm going to Kansas City June 27th to open up for one of my idols, Big Chris Calico. That's all I really wanted to say. Dreams can come true.
I know many of you for your work in the nonprofit sector, and I know a lot of you have been working on the issues that My Brother's Keeper is highlighting for boys and men of color for years, if not decades. And I know that a lot of you have healthy skepticism of these sort of efforts, which I do as well, because we've all been through these cycles of sort of what's the shiny community of color of the week that everybody's super excited about, and then all of a sudden somebody's interested in something else. The funding, the public policy work, all of it, it moves along. And it's really like having a beautiful boat that is filled with lots of holes. It is not going to get you anywhere if you're constantly moving from issue to issue to issue. Today is a turning point where we move beyond flowery words and short-term solutions, but we talk about how we're going to be different. How are we going to be different as funders? How is the government going to be different? And how do we have to be different as a community to make sure that we have opportunities for boys and young men of color to be successful in our local community? How is really where the magic happens. We talk a lot about programs and initiatives and special things. If you want to get to systems change, that is about changing how we do our work, and that's what both the mayor's offices and the funders have committed to in this process, is looking internally and changing how we do our work. So today's the day that we stop bailing out water and we start to fix the holes. I know where the holes are in my part of the boat, and you know where the holes are in your part of the boat. And I need to trust that you're going to do your part, and you need to trust that I'm going to do mine. So this work is really about relationship building and trust so that we're able to create this change. There's a chart that we have that's a big circle. So let's see if we can get to that slide. So my area of the boat is the funding community. So you're going to see them in this bottom corner over here on your left. Minnesota Council on Foundations has 180 members that give away more than $1 billion a year. These funders are committed to better understanding and developing relationships with nonprofits that are working on issues that boys and men of color are facing. They're especially interested in developing relationships with people of color-led organizations, which are often skipped in this funding process. MCF is also working to build a diverse pipeline of leaders of color to work in foundations. Many of you know about our Ron McKinley Philanthropy Fellowship Program, which is intended to change the face of who's making decisions about funding in our local community. We have 8 fellows that are currently placed at 3 different foundations, and that program is only growing. So I'm really hopeful of what the future of philanthropy is going to look like. The last piece that we have committed to in this My Brother's Keeper process is aligning our public policy work with the goals of My Brother's Keeper. So you'll see here down on the bottom all of the areas that President Obama has laid out. We have foundations that are working on each of these issues and have been working on those issues for a long time, but we need to align our public policy efforts so that they match what we're hearing from the White House. Now, today you've heard about the mayor's commitments and the commitment to systems change. That's a huge commitment, and I think the surprise with My Brother's Keeper has been it isn't just a flash-in-the-pan initiative. At the federal level, it's questions about how do we have to change how we operate. It's the exact same issues, and both of our mayors have really taken leadership to say, we have to do something different. What is that going to look like? So a piece of it is a systems change. The other is on that program planning and budgeting process. There's going to be questions specifically about strategies geared towards boys and men of color. So for the Parks Department or for the libraries, what are the strategies that are getting developed as budgets are being decided and dollars are being allocated to make sure that we're reaching those communities? And then the other is the bully pulpit that the mayors have. So they're talking all the time, 6-7 speeches a day, and many of those times they're talking about issues that are happening in our community. Too often in the past, as we've talked about boys and men of color, it's been with that at-risk lens, it's been that negative lens, and we have committed to talk about the opportunity that's available when you work with boys and young men of color and all the great things that are happening. You're meeting all these young men today who are doing fabulous things. They're not our future leaders, they're our current leaders. And so highlighting those efforts really make a big difference. So lastly and most critically is the work that's already happening in community. You know the Twin Cities has a robust nonprofit sector. We have many organizations, they're doing great work, and many of them are working on these issues. As we were developing this strategy, instead of doing a nonprofit by nonprofit strategy where we reach out to a couple and kind of determine, well, who's going to be in the inner circle of My Brother's Keeper, we've decided to leverage the collective action efforts that are already happening in the community. Many of you are part of these collective action tables that have existed for a long time. Minnesota's really been on the cutting edge of this. Things like Northside Achievement Zone, Gen Next, Sprockets, Hire Minnesota, Minnesota Second Chance Coalition, and literally hundreds more have been working on these issues. And at these tables, there's multiple nonprofits that are working together to create change. Now, one of the things that has been missing from many of these tables is a specific lens about either people of color in general or boys and men of color specifically. And the tables don't have strategies that are geared specifically towards boys and young men of color, and that's a big need. So what we're asking the tables to do is to either identify or add at least one or two My Brother's Keeper liaisons. And these are going to be regular active participants in these tables, but they're also going to be the navigators that help the table see where strategies specific to boys and young men of color are needed. And the expectation is that a majority of these liaisons will be boys and young men of color themselves that will be able to have those voices at the table and help us figure out what is needed to develop these strategies. Then we're going to convene these liaisons once or twice a year to share strategies across tables. So often what we're hearing is there's one table working on education, there's another one over here, and they don't connect. So we're seeing the opportunity to pull these liaisons together as a place to strengthen all of the tables' work and also to influence both the mayor's offices and the funders so that we have a better understanding of what's happening on the ground. So for all of you, I think there's the need to decide which hole in the boat you're going to fix. Is it graduation rates? Is it summer jobs? Is it culturally relevant curriculum? And then where are you going to start plugging those holes? There's more information about the My Brother's Keeper action plan, which you should have received a card when you came in. Does somebody have the card so they can wave it so people can see? There you go. There's a website on the back. Both the Minneapolis and St. Paul mayor's offices have websites. There's contact information on those websites if you'd like to get more involved in the efforts. You also have the opportunity to submit questions for everybody that's on the stage, including the youth. So there are note cards that maybe are being passed around. I can't see. There you go. They're coming in the back. So we're going to pass the note cards around. If you have questions, please write them clearly because I'm going to have to read them. And you can ask those questions of anybody that's here. The future of our community is depending on the commitments that we've made today and the actions that we take tomorrow. So this is where we start our journey together. I appreciate all of your work, and I appreciate all the work of all the folks that have been doing this. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, my name is Jose Gonzalez, and I'm just, I go by the name of El Sol. So I'm just here to represent any minority, to achieve anything, no matter your skin color. And you can do it in a positive way. So I'm going to just do a song that I wrote. It goes like this. Properly keeping property for prophecies and the wisdom of Socrates. I remember I used to rock Socrates. I thought it was me, really thought it was me. In reality, I was living my pop's legacy illegally, but he still managed to feed the whole family. Right along with moms, and their hearts were dying, but their love kept them strong. Always taught me the word of God, left me starving for a better cause like Ramadan. It's the passion in my blood that'll drive me till I'm gone. Place the pushing in the cushion so I can fall back on my songs. Never inhale on bad trips, cause I'm done with anything that's wrong. And that's word up to any brother trying to make it like me. It's absurd how they label MCs, enabling the poet for poetry. It's all a race for positioning. Really, who wants to be president? I'd rather make money with my team so we can move out slums sufficiently. $1 million for dogs so they can see que Jose va ahí, me caí, pero nunca rendí. And that's two tongues, one's for dumbs, flow words filled with stunts, so don't sung cause you done. And that's that for cats that rap a lack, so we gotta settle for trash. Their only occupation is cash. Mine's the same except I put effort for dabs, and that's what's up.